Imagine a life where you're constantly chasing fleeting highs, only to crash back down into exhaustion and anxiety. This is the vicious cycle of the dopamine trap, and it's holding you back from achieving your goals. It's a feeling you might be familiar with, but have you ever stopped to think about what's driving it? The truth is, our brains are wired to respond to novelty and pleasure. This is because dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in motivation and reward, is released in anticipation of something exciting or pleasurable. The problem is, this natural response can quickly become a habit. We start to crave that instant gratification, whether it's through social media, shopping, or other vices. And before we know it, we are trapped in a cycle of addiction, constantly chasing the next high. But here's the thing, this cycle is not just about individual choices. It's a societal phenomenon that's been engineered to keep us hooked. Think about it. Social media platforms, online retailers, and even some apps on our smartphones are all designed to activate our brain's reward centers. We are constantly being told what we want, and how we can get it. It's a clever trick, but it's also a trap. Because when we are always chasing the next high, we are never really satisfied. We are never really fulfilled. This is where the dopamine detox comes in. It's not a quick fix or a magic solution, but rather a process of rewiring our brains to prioritize long-term satisfaction and fulfillment. It's about learning to appreciate the simple things, like a beautiful sunset or a good conversation with a friend. It's about finding joy in the everyday moments, rather than constantly chasing the next thrill. But how do we do it? The first step is to recognize the patterns in our behavior. Are we mindlessly scrolling through social media, or constantly checking our phones? Are we using these habits as a way to avoid stress or anxiety? Once we become aware of these patterns, we can start to make changes. We can start to limit our use of these vices, and replace them with more meaningful activities. For example, let's say you're someone who loves taking selfies. At first, it might seem harmless, but think about how often you're checking your phone to see how you look, or to see how many likes you've gotten. That's a lot of time spent on something that's not really adding value to your life. Instead, try replacing that habit with something more meaningful, like taking a walk outside or practicing a new skill. It's not always easy, of course. There will be moments when we feel like giving in to our old habits. But the key is to stay committed to our goals, and to find ways to make the process enjoyable. We can do this by surrounding ourselves with supportive people, or by finding ways to celebrate our progress. We can also try using tools like apps or planners to help us stay on track. One of the biggest challenges of the dopamine detox is that it requires us to confront our fears and insecurities. We have to face the fact that we are not as in control as we thought, and that our brains are wired to respond to certain triggers. It's a scary thought, but it's also an opportunity for growth and self-awareness. So, how do we overcome these fears? The first step is to acknowledge them. We have to recognize that they're there, and that they're affecting our behavior. Then, we can start to work on building our self-awareness and self-regulation skills. This might involve practicing mindfulness, or learning to recognize and manage our emotions. It's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. Because when we are able to break free from the dopamine trap, we are able to achieve our goals and live a more fulfilling life. We are able to build meaningful relationships, pursue our passions, and find joy in the everyday moments. It's a life that's full of purpose and direction, and it's a life that's worth fighting for. So, what does this mean for you? Are you ready to take the first step towards breaking free from the dopamine trap? It's a journey that requires courage, commitment, and self-awareness. But the rewards are well worth it. Because when we are able to find long-term satisfaction and fulfillment, we are able to live a life that's truly extraordinary. But what if you could break free from the dopamine loop and unlock a life of purpose and fulfillment? It starts with understanding the science behind dopamine and its effects on our brains. For a long time, we've been led to believe that dopamine is the ultimate motivator, the key to unlocking our full potential. But the truth is, this neurotransmitter plays a far more intricate role in our brain's functioning. Dopamine is responsible for regulating motivation, pleasure, and reward processing in the brain. It's the reason we feel a rush of excitement when we achieve a goal or experience something pleasurable. But did you know that dopamine is also closely tied to our brain's habit-forming mechanisms? When we repeatedly engage in activities that stimulate our dopamine release, our brain begins to rely on these external sources for motivation rather than internal drive. This is where the problem starts. Chronic overstimulation can lead to dopamine resistance, making it harder to experience pleasure and motivation in the first place. It's like our brain becomes desensitized to the very things that used to bring us joy. We find ourselves constantly seeking out new and more intense sources of stimulation just to feel anything at all. But this vicious cycle is exactly what holds us back from achieving our full potential. So, how do we break free from this loop? The answer lies in understanding the concept of dopamine detox. It's not about cutting out all stimulating activities or substances from our lives, but rather about gradually reducing our exposure to them to allow our brain to reset and adapt. By giving our brain a chance to recalibrate its reward processing mechanisms, we can begin to tap into our internal drive and motivation once again. Imagine being able to approach challenges with a sense of excitement and curiosity, rather than relying on external sources of motivation. This is the life that awaits us when we break free from the dopamine loop. And the best part is, it's not just about achieving our goals, it's about cultivating a sense of purpose and fulfillment that comes from within. But how do we start this process? The answer is simpler than you might think. It starts with becoming aware of our habits and routines, and identifying areas where we can make subtle changes to reduce our exposure to stimulating activities. It might mean taking a break from social media, or limiting our screen time, or finding new hobbies and interests that stimulate our brain in a more natural way. The key is to approach this process with patience and compassion. It's not about depriving ourselves of pleasure or motivation, but rather about retraining our brain to rely on internal drive and motivation. And the results are well worth it: a life of purpose and fulfillment, free from the cycle of addiction and burnout. As we begin this journey, remember that it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Every small step we take towards breaking free from the dopamine loop brings us closer to unlocking our full potential. As she stepped out of her apartment, the crisp morning air invigorated her senses. For the past month, Sarah had been on a mission to break free from the dopamine trap that had been holding her back for years. She had tried countless strategies, from excessive exercise to unhealthy eating habits, but nothing seemed to stick. It wasn't until she stumbled upon the concept of dopamine detox that she began to see a glimmer of hope. So, how can you apply the principles of dopamine detox to your daily life and start achieving your goals? For Sarah, it started with prioritizing activities that promoted a sense of flow and engagement. She had always been fascinated by painting, but had never found the time to pursue it seriously. After conducting a thorough analysis of her schedule, she allocated 1 hour each day to devote to her art. The result was nothing short of astonishing. She found herself lost in the creative process, completely absorbed in the colors, textures, and emotions that flowed from her brush. As the days went by, Sarah began to notice another crucial aspect of her life: routine. Establishing a consistent daily schedule had a profound impact on her mental clarity and productivity. She started waking up at the same time every morning, meditating for 20 minutes, and then diving into her work with renewed energy and focus. The predictability of her routine allowed her to anticipate and prepare for the challenges that lay ahead, rather than succumbing to the whims of her emotions. But there was more to Sarah's transformation than just a newfound sense of structure and creativity. She had also begun to cultivate a deeper understanding of herself and her emotions. Through mindfulness practices and self-compassion exercises, she learned to acknowledge and accept her feelings, rather than trying to suppress or dramatize them. This newfound awareness allowed her to respond to life's challenges with greater ease and resilience, rather than reacting impulsively or emotionally. As Sarah continued on her journey, she began to notice profound shifts in her overall well-being. She felt more grounded, more focused, and more at peace with herself and the world around her. And it was precisely this sense of calm, this sense of clarity, that she knew would carry her through the ups and downs of